So, Dr. Ranjani Vasuki ji will join us soon. I will start the event with the Mangala Charanam. So, I hope it is good to take the verse of Kālidāsa only to begin with. Ya srishtisrashturadya vahati vidhihutam yaha viryacha hotri ye dve kalam vidhattah shruti vishaya guna ya sthita vyapya vishwam yamahus sarva bija prakritiritiya ya praninah pranavantah pratyakshabhih prasannah tanubhiravatu vastabhirashtabhirishah. So the first day of Āṣāḍha is very significant, especially for the people who are the connoisseurs or artists of Kālidasa's poetry. This is the reason behind this is it is from Meghadutam only. So Kalidasa sets the context for his evergreen poetry Meghadutam, where he says, Āṣāḍhasya prathama divase meghamāślishtasanum vaprakrīdā parinatagaja prekshaniyam dadarsha. So he says that on the first day of Āṣāḍha, he saw the cloud. And if we go little back, so actually the Yaksha, he got cursed by his Lord Kubera, and the curse was Varshabhogya Viprayoga. So he got separated from his beloved wife for 1 year, and one entire year, Varsham Bhogya. And so somehow he passed 8 months, and on the first day of Āṣāḍha, he saw the cloud, and at that time he felt to send a message to his beloved wife, and then the poetry gets started. It's very interesting to note that the commentaries of the great like Vallabhadeva, they have different opinions on it. Vallabhadeva says that Āṣāḍhasya prashama divase, the last day of Āṣāḍha. And another one says that Āṣāḍhasya pratham adivase. So, aha Vishnuhu asya ekadashi. It is Shayani Ekadashi, which will fall on in Āṣāḍha Ekadashi only. So, the reason is like after 4 months of this, we will get Utthana Dwadashi. And later, Kalidasa or Yaksha says that Shapasyanta Bhavita Utthite Sharngapano. So there are different opinions, but we will go with the Āṣāḍhasya Prathama Divase that is accepted by many of the commentators. So this day, in many places in India, across the world, people celebrate in different ways. So we are also for that. And to begin with, I request our Director of the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems, Dr. Vinay Chandraji, to offer welcome address.
Sabhaye Namaha, Sabhasadbhyo Namaha. It's indeed a great opportunity to begin the formal events of the university with this particular event, Kālidāsa Day celebrations, especially on the first day of Āṣāḍha Masa. And today, in all its completeness, it's an Āṣāḍha Day, Meghachannam, so it's filled with the Megha. There was also light shower, and it's post-afternoon, slightly sleepy time. So in the way, all prayer conditions are fulfilled. So I think it's just things are falling in place. This is the first event of the university, first university of the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems at Chanakya University. When the whole thought of the university began, there were 2 important concerns that we had when the whole ball was set rolling. One, how do we ensure that Indian thought is brought back into this whole academics, the world of academics, while there is more and more westernization happening in the name of modernization. Can there be an attempt to see how Indian thought can be brought in? And secondly, there was also another concern. There seems to be a skewed priorities towards technology and sciences at the cost of humanities. Is there any way we can bring back that attention towards humanities? Not that one has to be preferred over the other, but some kind of balance can be restored between these three, humanities, sciences, and technology. So these were some of the important concerns. And therefore, when the university was conceived, it was felt that one of the first schools to be operationalized is the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. So in that way, that was the first school, and also representing the concern towards Indic thought, Indian knowledge systems. One of the first centers that was established under the university was also Center for Indian Knowledge Systems. It's not that we have already a well-charted path to see how to go forward. It's a path of exploration, something that we have to make the way as we go along, but nevertheless, the commitment remains, and this is a sort of a kind of work in progress that has been initiated. So this is the backdrop in which the center was established under the university, and university at its core has these concerns which it holds very clearly, and through various events, activities, and offerings, it intends to represent these or reflect upon these concerns and try to address them. So in this backdrop, this event is being organized, and I take great opportunity to welcome all the dignitaries who have assembled on this day, especially the chair of the session, Professor H.V. Nagaraj Rao. As most of us here are aware, he is one of the greatest scholars of our times, Vidvad Varenya, or Meru Vidwan, as we can say. So it's an honor to have him on this occasion. May I now request our Vice Chancellor, Professor Yashwant Dongreji, who is here, to give him the bowl of flowers and welcome him. In fact, this is a symbol or to represent what happens in Meghaduta, where the Girimallika Pushpa is offered by Yaksha to the Megha. Swagatam, sir. May I now request Professor K.V. Raju, who is the Dean of Research, Professor Emeritus at Chanakya University, to kindly welcome Naresh Keerthi. Dr. Naresh Keerthi is an Assistant Professor at Ashoka University. Sir, please. I'll now request Ramkrishna ji to offer the flowers to Professor Ashok sir, who is the Dean of School of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences at Chanakya University. He has been a Professor of Psychology in Bengaluru University and currently heading the School of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences at Chanakya. May I now request Vinayak Rajat, Associate Professor at Center for Indian Knowledge Systems at Chanakya University, to kindly offer the flowers to Arjun Bharadwaj. And we also would like to extend our hearty welcome to all the participants who have joined us here. There are many more, we believe, have joined on the cloud through the online mode. So we would like to extend a hearty welcome to each and everyone. In fact, the Kavyananda happens only when the Sahridayis are there. Therefore, it's a great opportunity. In fact, this actually speaks about what we intend to stand for. Bringing back the Sahridayate, bring back the concerns and the taste for literature itself is something that is missing in the academics today. Therefore, we hope that this journey will continue for long, and with the blessings and wishes of all of you, we would like to start this program. Thank
you. अस्माकं केन्द्रस्य निर्देशकाय तत्र भवते विनयचन्द्रवर्यायापि स्वागतं हार्दं व्याहरामि. Now I request Professor Ashok HS, the Dean of School of Arts and Humanities, for some opening remarks.
Dignitaries on the dais, Sanskrita Premis, Kālidāsa Premi lovers, welcome to this particular program. On behalf of Chanakya University, I welcome every one of you. Dr. Vinay Chandra has already introduced the context, and I was also, the first remark, a thought that came to my mind when I entered the auditorium was the same thing. So one thing that was missing, that he missed, was along with the cloud, the rain, and this, we also had a hot cup of coffee also. Probably that was not heard of at that time of Kalidasa. Okay, that's one aspect is concerned. Let me first congratulate IKS team having thought of celebrating Kalidasa Day. And I also, request them not only to stop at Kalidasa, then you have Bana and Bhasa and other things also. Probably you can continue this sort of an activity. The only thing is we can also have this sort of a program. One thing is on cloud also, as well as on the campus. So that's one factor. I was just thinking about what would be my role here. So I take my thought process way back to under my undergraduate studies, where we were fortunate to have Meghaduta, a part of Meghaduta as our course curriculum, and I remember that. And before that, there were informally some Sanskrit classes and lessons used to go, and that's where I was introduced to Sanskrit literature. I know only the first letter of, let us say, Sanskrit in front of these august audience is concerned. Okay, so that's one factor. See, we are thinking in terms of Indian knowledge system, and then that's where lot of literature is available, and that particular literature is not only restricted only to the literature, but that also has a wide scope that need to be applied to the other field also. So though we need not have to look at any literary work only as a literary work, can we have the application to that particular field also, other fields also? And social science is a broad area where a lot of applications are possible. I take this opportunity to make use of the IKS, to make use of these august guardians, to integrate them into our system and have sort of a research, integrated research, so that the literature, the interest in literature would not be restricted only to the literary people, but also the others. I, congratulate IKS and encourage them to continue. And I also thank the dignitaries who have willingly participated. I look forward for the interesting and beautiful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your Samayochita words. So, I'm very glad to, especially to acknowledge that our senior professors like K.V. Raju, Dean of Research, and our Vice Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Yashwant Dongre, these people are also, especially our university office is located in Nagarbavi, and another office is in Devanahalli. We are conducting the event here, but it's because of the love and affection towards Indian culture that they are present here. And to introduce Professor Yashwant Dongre, sir, he has the rich experience, more than 30 years in Mysuru University and many other places also. He is a professor of commerce and management. So such people also interested in such events and they are participating makes us more delighted. So with this, I would like to welcome our own Dr. Ranjani Vasuki ji. So she will also be participating in Vācana and Vyākhyāna program later. So I request Raghavan sir to Pratyagra Mallika Kusuma. Yeah. So Kālidāsa says, Sap Pratyagraihi Kutada Kusumaihi Kalpitarghaya Tasmai. So it is Kutaja Girimallika flower. So Namaikadesha Grahanam, Namagrahane, Namaikadesha Grahananyayena. So Mallika also can serve as Girimallika at times. So now we will go to listen to our Professor Naresh Keerthi ji. And before that, let us hear his introduction, and we cannot find better person to introduce him than our Dr. Venkataraghavan. So I will request him to introduce Dr. Naresh Keerthi.
Hello. Yes, I am barely able to control my excitement to introduce my collaborator, my esteemed former colleague, and also in some ways my teacher, Dr. Naresh Keerthi ji. His introduction that he gave us is very modest. He says, Dr. Naresh Keerthi is an assistant professor and head currently at the Department of Sanskrit Studies, Ashoka University, Delhi. He studies, he says, but we all know he does much more than that. He studies Kavya and Natya literature, as well as the attendant disciplines of Kavya Shastra and Natya Shastra. And he is also interested in the history of the Bhasha literary traditions of the subcontinent, how they how they interact with each other and how they have spread. And but for those of us who know him, we know him as a lover of everything classical, from sticks and stones to flora and fauna to cuisine and criticism. So I am very much happy that I am getting this opportunity to introduce him. He is also a master of puns. I have been a victim of several of them on occasions. Victim, target, audience, all I have been at several occasions. And so I now welcome Dr. Naresh Keerthi to please address us on Kālidāsa, Kavya Sushama, Kālidāsa and the nature of poetry. Thank you.
Thank you, Raghavan. Thank you, everyone. After that somewhat challenging introduction, I fear it may be a bit of a letdown. Firstly, a big thanks to Chanakya University for inviting me. And it's very heartening that universities also think of doing events like this, like the Kālidāsa Divasa. And I suspect a lot of the credit must go to my dear friend Ramakrishna Pejataya. Ever since the time when I was not a researcher of Sanskrit and I was only reading Kavya and Kavya Shastra as a hobbyist, it has been my habit to call a friend on this day, to call some Kavya friend on the first day of Āṣāḍha and to greet them. After all, for the last some large number of years, 1,600 odd years, a very big percentage of us in the Kavya world, let us say 99% of us in the Kavya world, believe that it was on the first day of Āṣāḍha that the Yaksha asked the cloud to be his courier, to carry his letter. Why do I say 99%? Pejataya ji told us why. Because there are some people like Vallabhadeva who is very pedantic and likes obscure readings, and he reads it as Āṣāḍhasya Prashama Divase, the last day of Āṣāḍha. And I think there are some 12, 15 scholars in Kashi and Germany who believe that it should be Āṣāḍhasya Prashama Divase. I think there is a very happy compromise possible. Sir was saying that Chanakya University should not only celebrate Kalidasa Day, but Bana Day and Bhatti Day and Bhavabhuti Day. Perhaps the last day of Āṣāḍha you can celebrate as Vallabhadeva Day. Of course, he's an important commentator, oldest available commentator on Kavya, I think. But I'd like to talk to you about a very important matter. It is a kind of heart disease. It is quite contagious, and social distancing cannot help you to avoid it. Nor is there any known cure. Symptoms include restlessness and an itching sensation. Kalidasa himself has given a description of this disease in the verse, Ramyani Viksha Madhuramshta Nishamya Shabdan. This Vedana or disease is called Hridaya Samvedana. And while there is no permanent cure, it is possible to do some upashamana, some symptomatic treatment. One can get temporary relief from the itch of having read good poetry and having nobody around to share it with, this satkavya kanduti, by seeking out another person with the same disease. This is the only relief possible. So I have a chronic version of this disease, and I suspect everyone in this room is affected to some or the other degree. And I can assure you that if you didn't already have it, you're going to catch it today, especially after listening to Vidushi Ranjani's splendid singing and Arjun's explanations. I have many happy memories of discussing poetry, not only of Kālidāsa, but other Satkavis like Kumaradasa, Rajasekhara, Mayuraja, Bhoja, Nilakantha Dikshita, Ramabhadra Dikshita, and also Kannada poets like Ranna Nagavarma and Pampa with my good friend Ubhaya Bhashavadhani, Ramakrishna Pejataya. And he has invited me today to scratch the itch, and I'm only too happy to accept. Similarly, it's a pleasure to see my friend and collaborator Raghavan and Vinayak Rajat Bhatt, and to see scholars like Ganeshji and Professor Nagaraj Rao. With these preliminary tomfoolery remarks, let me go into my talk. I wasn't sure of the nature of the audience, so I will give some impressionistic descriptions that you may already know about, but please treat it as smaraye na tu shikshaye. You may be very familiar with these things. So to give you somewhat synopses of the kavyas of the poetry of Kālidāsa, the Raghuvamsha one can call the exemplar of the courtly Mahakavya. It has descriptions of the court and the capital, as well as the jungle and the countryside in equal measure. It is full of fine examples of verses that shine individually as well as part of a prabandha. The Kumara Sambhava is the story of the death of lust and the birth of love. It is a story which has the heroine at the center, Parvati. She is a child of the hills, entirely at home in the wilderness, and it is a story of her love. One can call it an early poetic expression of Prema Bhakti. The Megha Sandesha, some people call it a Khanda Kavya because it doesn't have the features of a full Kavya, it doesn't have Sargabandha and the conventional descriptions. However, I think it is an Akhanda Kavya, a complete and dazzling piece of art in its own right. I have promised not to say too much about the Meghaduta, as there is going to be another talk about it. Let me stop with this brief remark that the Megha Sandesha is a Copernicus moment in the history of literature, not only of Sanskrit literature, not only of Indian literature, but of world literature. Its success is self-evident, it is Svatasiddha, it needs no defense. Nonetheless, it is validated by the large number of imitations, Samasya Purana poems, letters even, that were inspired by it. Also, I suspect that amongst the works of Kālidāsa, it was the Meghaduta that elicited the largest number of commentaries. It appears that in medieval India, there were two top favorite topics for MA theses. One is to write a commentary on the Megha Sandesha, or to write a commentary on Mamata's Kavya Prakasha. Alankarikas such as Vāmana have questioned the choice of a non-living thing, a lifeless thing, such as the cloud, as a messenger of love. But I've always felt this is a pedantic question, it's a wrong question. If Rama can address the breeze and tell it to blow in the direction of Sita, surely a clever cloud can carry a message. In my opinion, the more interesting question, which I don't have an answer for, is why is the protagonist of the Megha Sandesha a yaksha? Why was it not a deva? Why was it not a human being? And please don't say because there is such a story in the Padma Purana. This is not an intellectually attractive answer. There has to be a more sophisticated explanation for that. So the yakshas are often called guhyakas. They are the secretive beings with some semi-magical powers, and they are said to guard treasures. In this case, I feel that the Meghaduta itself is guarding this guhya, and we have to figure out why he chose to put a yaksha as this figure. I'd be very happy if someone came up with an aesthetically satisfactory explanation for this point. Moving on, the Vikramorvashiya is a highly symbolic play drawing upon the ancient tale of Pururavas repeated in the Veda, the Brahmana, later in the Mahabharata. It is also a tale of the singularity of love as being a singularly or supremely human quality. even the gods and the apsaras crave for this strange emotional experience. I feel it is this very theme of celebrating the human condition and this worldly or aihika life that inspired the Hindi poet Maithili Sharana Gupta to write his poem Nahusha. There is an episode soon after Nahusha is crowned and he is in Swarga, and Narada comes to visit him. And then Nahusha says to Narada, "Unche rahe Swarg, niche bhumi ko kya tota hai? Mastak se hriday kabhi kya kuch chota hai?" Swarga may be above and the earth may be below, but so what? Does it make it any lesser? If the head is above and the heart is below, is feeling less than thinking? There are very special features in the Vikramorvashya, including Charchari songs in Apabhransha. Some scholars say that they may be later interpolations. And the Malavikagnimitra is in a slightly different genre of the Nataka. One can say it is almost like the Natika genre that we see used by King Harshavardhana. It is a play with an emphasis on romantic affairs and intrigue. At the same time, there is a lot of importance on performance and training in music and dance. Coming to the play that I will mostly speak about today, the Abhijnana Shakuntala. I will try and avoid the temptation to use adjectives of praise. I feel Kalidasa needs no certificate from me, but it is going to happen at some point. It is the high flower of Kalidasa's work. It is his greatest work that is famous for all the wrong reasons. And the great variation we see with the Abhijnana Shakuntala in the three sets of manuscripts, the Bengali Maithili set, the Kashmiri Sharada set, and the South Indian set, where you see whole dialogues are added, whole important verses are being left out, are very interesting, and it makes it a difficult text to produce an edition of. However, this attests to the fact that the Shakuntala was not only widely read, but that perhaps it was performed in these different regions. And what we have received in the form of these manuscripts are actually actors' folios, where they have chosen to expand or dilate the text depending upon their performance tradition. Incidentally, the oldest commentary on the Shakuntala, as far as I know, is by a South Indian. It is by a certain Dakshinavartanatha, who may have been from the Tanjavur region or perhaps also from Kerala. Now, the Ritusamhara is a very interesting poem and it is very popular. I will not include it in my discussion of Kalidasa's work. It may be the work of a certain Kalidasa. I am not sure if it is the Kanishthikadishthita Kalidasa. So after this somewhat rambling preface, I would like to speak about this topic, which Raghavan mentioned in the beginning, the nature of poetry, the nature of Kalidasa's poetry. The off here, it is supposed to be a kind of Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa, where you can take the Shashti in any direction. Ramakrishna Pajataya began with the first verse of the Shakuntala, Yasrishti Srashturadhya. It is very striking that Kalidasa invokes the blessing of Ashtamurti Shiva. Shiva manifests in these 8 forms, which include natural phenomena, the 5 elements, the markers of time, the sun and the moon, as well as human phenomena, sacrifice, havis, and the person who makes or performs sacrifice, the hotra. To my mind, this interplay of the natural, phenomenal, external world and the human, personal, internal world is a dominant motive in Kalidasa. And just as one could stare at one of those psychological trick pictures where once it looks like a rabbit and at another moment it looks like a duck, and these 2 elements keep swinging in and out of focus, one feels the same way about the poetry of Kalidasa. What indeed is the background and what indeed is the object? What was the Yaksha truly wistful for? Is it the wife that is described exclusively in the rather unimpressive Uttara Megha, or is it all those charming places and woods and creatures described in the Purva Megha? Is Raghu's Digvijaya about Raghu's conquest over the many regions in the subcontinent, or is it about how the beauties of these places won over either Raghu or Kalidasa? We can temporarily amuse ourselves by thinking about which is the Uddishta and which is the Vidheya in these pairs. I only hope someone doesn't take this idea too far and say that the Valmiki Ramayana is actually the story of 2 Krauncha birds. Regardless of which option one chooses, anyone who has studied the poetry of Kālidāsa in any measure will agree that there is something singular in his very deft use of natural elements. It is not merely about the attentive swabhavoktis, like when he describes the flight of the deer in the verse Griva Bhanga Abhirama. It is not merely in the use of nature-based metaphor. When the Vācana says in the Shakuntala, stop Dushyanta from shooting at the deer, he says, Nakhalu nakhalu bano sannipatyoya masmin mruduni mrigasharire pushparasha vivagnihi. And he says to shoot this fawn is like setting a heap of flowers on fire. Rather, I feel one of the singular features of Kālidasa's use of natural elements lies in his enfolding of the ecological into the interpersonal. This deliberate break of the barrier between the so-called inner world of humans and their minds, sentiments, and acts, and the so-called outer world of plants and creatures, rivers and rocks, the skies, and everything in between. It is seen in the oldest Tamil poems, beginning with the Padinezhu Kizhkanakku. It is seen in the Gaha Satasai, but it is quite different in Kālidāsa. Hopefully we will see that. So I will give you one dominant case study, and this is the treatment of the deer in the Shakuntala. And let us see if it tells us something about Kālidasa's approach to the use of nature in poetry. So let us see the frame of the Abhignana Shakuntala. The play proper begins with the charioteer describing Dushyanta. Dushyanta he has his bow and arrow, and he says, Krishnasare dadachakshuhu tvaichadhijya karmukhe mriganusarinam sakshat pashyamiva pinakinam. Now commentators such as Raghava Bhatta and following him Abhirama, the anonymous Keralite commentator of the Abhignana Shakuntala Charcha, they make much about this use of Pinakin. They say it is, aha, what a beautiful Parikaralankara. Instead of saying Trishulinam, instead of saying Kapardinam, he has said Pinakinam. Yes, this episode about Shiva itself is interesting in its own right. In one of the Dakshayaga, I didn't translate the verse, sorry. So the meaning of the verse is this. This is the driver, you can imagine the scene. The charioteer is looking at Dushyanta sitting at the back of his chariot. Dushyanta has his bow with the arrow fixed, aiming at a deer which is going ahead of them. And the charioteer turns around, looks at his master and says, as I gaze at the antelope and then at you with a bow ready to strike, I seem to see Shiva the archer hunting down the deer. And here it's a very specific deer that Shiva hunted. And let me tell you about that. So in one of the versions of the Dakshayaga story in the Mahabharata, and in the Mahabharata itself the story is told twice or thrice, it is the Yajna Purusha that eludes Shiva and in the form of a deer and runs away. Shiva pursues this deer, it even flies up into the sky, and then he hunts it down. And after this, all the gods accept Shiva's sovereignty and offer him Sarvani Havimshi, all the Havis. And this story must have an older Vedic astronomical element to it, given that both Mriga or Mrigashiras and Vyādha connote the same constellation, what we call Orion. Another version of the tale has Brahma lusting after his own creation and thereby his daughter, Sandhya. Shiva is enraged by this and pursues him to punish him. In this account, Brahma shape shifts, turns into a deer and flies up into a sky. A brief account of this episode is found in the very popular Mahimnaf Parastava by Pushpadanta. Prajanatham natha prasabham abhikam swam duhitaram gatam rohit bhutam riramayishum rishyasya vapusha dhanushpaner yatam divamapi sapatra kritamamum trasantam tedyapi tyajati na mrigavyadha rabhasa. So the Suta is comparing Dusyanta's pursuit of the deer to Shiva's pursuit of Prajapati or Yajna. Is this quite appropriate? Shiva's act, of course, is to right a wrong. But Dushyanta, though he doesn't know it yet, his pursuit is not quite ethical. This is made amply clear when the Vaikhanasas call out to the king and stop him from killing the antelope. And they say, Ashrama mrigoyam nahantavyaha nahantavyaha. This first action-filled episode with the description of the chariot ride, the chase, the hunt, of course, prefigures Dusyanta's pursuit of Shakuntala. Please bear in mind this first scene. The deer keeps recurring as a significant leitmotif through the poetry of Kālidāsa. Already in the Vikramorvashiya, he has stated that the deer is capable of emotions such as love towards the young one, love towards the partner. Asyantikam ayanti shishuna stanapayina mrigi ruddha tam ayam ananya drishtihi bhugnagrivo vilokayati. So this doe was walking towards the deer, but then she stopped to nurse her fawn. Meanwhile, the deer turned his head towards her and waited, unblinking. Coming back to the Shakuntala, in the second act, when Dushyanta sees Shakuntala for the first time, the Prathama Darshana, in a grand gesture, he gives up hunting. And the reason he gives for why he has stopped hunting, he says, is Nanamayitum adhijyamasmi shakto dhanuridam ahita sayakam mrigeshu sahavasati mupetya yaif priyaya krita iva mugdha vilokanopadeshaha. I am no longer capable of bending my bow to shoot down these deer. They are companions of my sweetheart and seem to have taught her the art of giving innocent looks. Also, when Dushyanta wants to hide his love for Shakuntala from the Vidushaka, he describes Shakuntala as a wild person brought up in the company of deer. Kvavayam kvaparokshamanmatho mrigashavai samam edhito janaha. Where is that kind of person is like Mowgli growing up wild. Where are we, Chakravartis? The next instance of a deer in the Shakuntala is actually an episode that deserves a separate talk all by itself. This is the context. It is when Shakuntala is leaving for the city, and it is when her friend Priyamvada remarks about how the whole forest is grieving her departure. For Kalidasa, the animals, trees, and plants aren't just sensitive feeling creatures. They are true Sahridayas. Not only can they act in their individual capacities, like the forest trees that gifted Shakuntala with ornaments and silks, or the pet deer Dirghapanga that tried to prevent her from leaving, but the entire forest is one sentient being, and it has a swarm intelligence of sorts. Think of Kalidasa's polyvalent Himavan. It is a mountain sprawling along the breadth of the subcontinent. But it is also the king of mountains. It is the Nagadhi Raja. But it is also a he. It is sentient. And it has a noble, even divine character. It is Devata Atma. The same is true for the forest. The forest may be made up of some jada materials, and it may accommodate some Chetana characters, but it also has a Chetana, a collective Chetana, if you will. And it shares the feelings of the character and responds with empathy. So Priyamvada's verse really captures the intensity of this ability. Uggaliya dabha kavala miya parichatta nadana mora osariya pandu patta muvanti assuviya ladao udgalita darbha kavala mrigaha parityakta nartana mayuraha apasrita pandu patra munchanti ashruni iva lataha. Morsels of cud slip away from the mouths of deer uneaten. Peacocks give up dancing, and the vines shed pale leaves like streams of tears. This dense, compact arya in Prakrit has resonances both in Kalidasa's own poetry and elsewhere. In the Raghuvamsha we see when Lakshmana leaves Sita in the forest and gives her the reason, she breaks into tears. The moment he leaves, Ramanuje Drishtipatham Vyatite, she cries like a hawk screeching. You may have heard these Brahmini kites screech in Bangalore also. Sa Muktakantham Yasanati Bharat Chakranda Vigna Kurari Iva Bhuya. She wailed over and over like a screeching Kurari falcon. And then what happened? Nrityam Mayura Kusumani Vriksha Darbhan Upattan Vijahur Harinyaha Tasyaf Prapanne Samadukha Bhavam Atyantam Asit Ruditam Vane Api. Peafowl abandoned dance, tree shed their flowers, and deer stopped chewing the cud. Sharing in her sorrow, all the forest grieved. There are many later reflexes of this image after Kālidāsa. I will offer one of the less sophisticated ones. In the Kundamala, we find in an episode identical to the Raghuvamsha, when Lakshmana is leaving Sita, Ete rudanti harina haritam vimuchya, hamsascha shoka vidhurah karunam rudanti, nrittam tyajanti shikhinopi vilokya devim, tiryaggata varamami naparam manushyaha. These deer give up their grass and cry. Also the Hamsa geese, they are sad and they squawk out of sorrow. The peacocks too, having seen Sita, give up their dance. It is not the so-called lower creatures, the creatures of lower intelligence are able to feel her sorrow, but there are no humans to feel Sita's sorrow. I keep saying that I don't want to pass judgment, but compare the explicit vachya, tedious quality of this verse with the light, tight quality of the Shakuntala verse. The Arthantaranyasa also at the end of the Kundamala verse, I don't think it works very well. But I also have a good example. There is one verse in the Gaha Satasai that compares favorably with the Shakuntala verse. It's a description of the summer. Rovantiva aranye dusaha rayi kirana faunsa santatta ayitara jhilli viruehi paava gimha majhanne. Rudantiva aranye दुस्सह रवि किरण स्पर्श संतप्ताः अतितार झिल्लिका विरुतैः पादपा ग्रीष्म मध्याह्ने. This is a description of the cricket or the cicada, and it is said that as it becomes hotter, the cricket's chirp becomes more and more shrill. So the poet imagines, scorched by the unbearable sun rays of a summer afternoon, the trees in the forest seem to shriek through the shrill chirps of the cicadas. This verse is quite impressive, but it contrasts with the Shakuntala verse in one important feature. In the Satasai verse, the forest is wailing at its own suffering, whereas in the Shakuntala and the Raghuvamsha verses, it is crying out of empathy for the other, and this confers a certain sublimity to the verse. It is interesting how the two episodes where Kalidasa uses this image are complements of each other. Sita's tragedy is one of coming to the forest, and the forest grieves with her. Shakuntala's tragedy is of leaving the forest, which is her natural habitat, and the forest grieves for her. The next instance of a deer in the Shakuntala is when Shakuntala is leaving the ashrama. And she says that there is this deer that is pregnant. The moment it has a safe delivery, please send news to me. And then as she is leaving, her cloth is pulled. She is held back by this pet fawn, presumably the same fawn that Dushyanta had pursued in the beginning of the Kavya. And then she says, who is this holding me back? And Kanva tells her that it was this Yasyattvaya Vranaviropanam Ingudinam, etc. That young deer, Soyam na putrakritaka padavim mrigaste, this one who is no less than a son of yours, it is this deer that is holding you back. It is tempting to read this deer as Shakuntala's alter ego, as some aspect of herself, of her subconscious, one that is at home in the ashrama pada and doesn't want to go to this alien land that is the city and palace. The next and perhaps most telling episode involving a deer is an episode which Shakuntala recounts to Dushyanta. She is brought to his court, and then she's trying to remind him of all the experiences they had together. And she tries to tell him how when she and Dushyanta were sitting by the side of the river, this deer Dirghapanga came, and Dushyanta tried to offer it water in a leaf cup, but the deer wouldn't accept it. But when Shakuntala offered it, he accepted it. And then Dushyanta teases her, saying, yes, of course, you're both of a kind, you're both children of the wilderness. Sarvas sagandheshu vishvasiti, dvavapi atra aranyakau. This incident further underlines the sadharmya between Shakuntala and the deer. Of course, the tragedy is that Dushyanta remembers none of this, and he denies the whole story. Further in the play, once the ring has been found, and Dushyanta is very remorseful at his treatment of Shakuntala, he tries to capture his memories in a painting. And he says, please bring me the painting board. I want to draw a pair of Hamsas on the banks of the Malini. And then I would like to draw some deer sitting there And how should these deer be? Shringe Krishnamrigasya Vamanayanam Kanduyamana Mrigim. I want to draw a painting where a doe is scratching the itch in its eye. Look, the itch has come again. Is scratching the itch in its eye on the antler of its partner, the black buck. This scene is full of the elements of domestic balance, of trust, of patience, of affection. And what we see here is Dusyanta's remorse. He has let the Mrigi go and now he wants to paint a Mrigatrishnika. There is an antecedent also to this scene in the Kumara Sambhava. Under the magic spell of Manmatha, we have a scene of the female deer scratching her itch on the antler of her lover. And the same deer will come back to play a cameo in Dusyanta's painting in the Abhignana Shakuntala. This much about the deer, but we also have to think of another animal. When we come to the last act of the Shakuntala, there is an episode that completes the narrative arc of the text into a ring. This episode involves not a Mriga, but a Mrigendra. Dushyanta, returning from the Devasura Yuddha, stops at an ashrama where he sees the child Bharata playing with a lion cub. And he sees that there is this babysitter, let us call her, who is very alarmed, and she's telling, Vatsa, enam balamrigendram muncha aparam te kridaniyakam dasyami. So please let that lion cub go. Bharata is playing with a lion cub and she's afraid. And also later, another tapasi comes and she requests the king himself, Dushyanta, saying, somehow make this child let go of this. Mochaya anena durmocha hastagrahena dimbhalilaya badhyamanam balamrigendram. And Dushyanta, who is already drawn to this child, is invited to separate the child from the cub. And I think there is a connection of symmetry between the initial episode where Dushyanta was pursuing an unsuitable quarry, the pet deer of the hermitage, to this scene in the end where a young Sarvadamana has successfully caught hold of a lion cub and is playing with it. This pair of episodes, if we consider them together, will blur any easy interpretation of the Shakuntala as being about the tension between the city and the forest or any such binary. It is indeed that, but it is more than that. The Shakuntala is, in my estimate, about learning to feel. Next, it is about learning to remember and to have the reflexive quality of contemplating on these experiences and cherishing past experiences. And I think this goal of cherishing and feeling is well achieved in events like the Kālidāsa Divasa. Saraswati Shruti Mahati Mahiyata. Thank you.
So, I request my colleagues to prepare the stage for the next evening, next item. And I request Professor Nagaraj Rao sir and Naresh Keerthi to sit here. We could witness both Vaidushya and Sachetasya of Dr. Naresh Keerthi with this lecture. And there are some websites that say that 10 best things to do in Mumbai or 10 best things to do in Delhi and all. So if you ask me that 10 best things to do in Bangalore, just attend such functions and listen to such scholars or artists. That is the first best thing to do in Bangalore, and Bangalore has such scholars and artists. So, and another thing I should acknowledge here that we have a rare opportunity in this Sabha that we can see the scholars and artists both Adhimancha and Abhimancha. So on the stage and in front of the stage, Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh sir and many others like Shashikiran Vasuki, he is an Ashtavadhani, and Raghavendra G.S. So many such scholars and artists and our MS Chaitra. So many such scholars have gathered here. So it makes the Sabha really Sabha. So that also I should acknowledge. And let us go to the next item. Now we are heading towards Vācana and Vyākhyāna of selected Kālidasa's verses. And I think most of the verses will be selected from Meghadutam only. So let me give the introduction of the two performers here. It will be very introductory introduction, and their performance will introduce their scholarship and skills. So Dr. Ranjani Vasuki, she is a Carnatic classical vocalist of rare melody and competency. She is the daughter and disciple of Dr. Nagavalli Nagaraj. She is a gold medalist in MA Music, and her PhD was about aesthetics synthesis of gamakas. She has several awards from esteemed institutions and has performed innumerable music concerts both in the country and abroad. And I introduce Sri Arjun Bharadwaj. Sri Arjun Bharadwaj is a writer, translator and researcher with deep interest in classical literature, arts and philosophy. An engineer by training, he is well versed in Sanskrit, Kannada, English, German and Greek. Arjun works as a contributing editor of Prekshaa and is currently studying the comparative aesthetics of classical Greek and Indian arts. He has co-written and translated many books and authored over 50 research articles related to science, arts and philosophy. He enjoys composing poems and plays the Carnatic flute. He is also a visiting faculty at many universities and educational institutions. Ubhayorapi विदोः कलाविदोश्च स्वागतम् अहं व्याहरामि इदानीं तयोः समयः
ಮತ್ತೆ ನನಗೆ ಮುಂದೆಯಿಂದ ಕೊಡಿ ಇದು ಸೈಡಿಂದ ಮುಂದೆಯಿಂದ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಫ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ತುಂಬ ಚಳಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಆಗಿಂದ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಹಿಂದೆ ಕೂತ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಷ್ಟು ಎತ್ತರ ಬೇಡ ಇದ್ರದ್ದು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಕ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ದೂರ.
ಹಲೋ, ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
Okay, we'll do that on. Keep it to the left. ಎಡಗಡೆ.
ಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು. Namaste. Very good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank, on behalf of myself and Dr. Ranjani Vasuki, I would like to thank the Chanakya University, Professor Pejataya, and the entire team for inviting us here on this very auspicious day of Āṣāḍha Prathama Divasa to speak a little bit about Kalidasa and also sing the verses of Kalidasa. It's indeed a very great blessing to be here with you all, and with a very august gathering before us. There are so many well-versed scholars. Professor H.V. Nagaraj Rao is here. Our greetings to him. And Shatavadani Dr. R. Ganesh is here, because of whom both myself and Ranjani have been immensely benefited from our childhood. So it's indeed a very great pleasure to be presenting this Vācana and Vyākhyāna this afternoon. We'll start off with a verse praising Kālidāsa.
Dasatam, dasatam, Kālidāsasya kavayaha ke na bibhrati. Dasatam Kālidāsasya kavaya ke na bibhrati. Idanimapi tasyarthan upajivanti ami yataha. Idanimapi tasyarthan upajivanti ami yataha. Idanimapi kavayaha Kālidāsasya arthan upajivanti.
That was a wonderful beginning in the very auspicious raga of Hamsadvani, beautifully rendered by Dr. Ranjani. So the verse is one of the opening verses in Madhura Vijaya, authored by a lady from Karnataka, a queen from Karnataka, Ganga Devi, who was the daughter-in-law of Bukkaraya and the wife of Veera Kampana. She lived in the 14th century around the region of Hampi. She says that even today, Kavayaha, especially poets, they have derived so much from the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of creativity, the meanings that Kalidasa has given. Idanim api tasyartan upajivantyami yataha. So we are just deriving pleasure, we are deriving creativity, we are deriving scholarship from him. We can also see the word artha as the purusharthas. The purusharthas which are put forth by Kalidasa in his kavyas, they can be guiding forces to all our lives. And the parama purushartha, the moksha, that the rasasvadana samskara that Kalidasa kavyadhyayana gives us, that leads us to the parama purushartha, which is moksha. Sarvepi hrudaye kavihi. When we take that into consideration, it's not just for poets, not just for artists, even for common men, for common people, Kalidasa has got so much of meaning. See, Kalidasa does not speak anything about himself in any of his works. For that matter, we don't even know if Kalidasa is his real name. He's just humbly saying that he's a devotee, he's a servant of Kalinaha Dasaha, Kalidasa, or it could be Kalyaha Dasaha, Kalidasa of Parameshwara, who is Shiva and Parvati. He's just a servant and he's devoted to them. So we don't even know what his real name is. And he's been such an enigma in the Indian tradition that people have always been trying to figure out when did he live, what was his place of residence and the time period where he resided. And we hardly get any evidence. Kalidasa does not speak about himself at all. So this is the very nature of Sanatana Samskriti. Sanatana people have not gone around the world beating their drums or claiming their glorious deeds. They have always been humble, unassuming. So the only two dates ever mentioned by Kalidasa are both present in the Meghaduta. So we'll hear a verse where the Āṣādhasya Prathama Divasa that comes, and Shāpānto me Bhujakashenad Uttite Shangrapanam. So Uttana Dvadashi gets to be mentioned. So these two dates have always been celebrated. The Uttana Dvadashi as the Kālidāsa Jayanti and the Āṣādha Prathama Divasa as Kālidāsa Divasa or Kālidāsa Ārādhana. The non-mentioning of dates almost makes Kalidasa timeless. So he's not bound by time. And from the internal evidence from his works, people have gathered that he probably lived in Ujjaini because that appears to be his favorite city. So because of non-mention of these parameters, the Sadharanikarana of Kalidasa has become much more easier. He has transcended space and time. Just like the Sanatana Samskriti, he is the true representation of Sanatana Dharma through Bharatiya. So it's a great blessing to be speaking about primarily the Meghaduta on this auspicious day. We'll start off with a couple of verses from the Meghaduta. Before we get into those verses, Idanim tasyarthan upajivantyamiyatah, Ganga Devi has said. So Meghaduta has been the first of its kind and the best of its kind, the best among the Dukta Kavyas and the first among the Duta Kavyas. There have been many different kinds of dutas which we encounter in our Vedic literature. There's this Ratri Devi herself who comes as a duti. And in the Ramayana we have Hanuman who comes as a duta. Similarly, in the Mahabharata, we have Hamsaduta, where Nala and Damayanti, the story of Nala and Damayanti comes. So all of these are for Shringara Dautya. But in the Mahabharata, we have Krishna also going there, where it's more like a political duta. He goes there. Anyway, goes to the court of the Kauravas. And similarly, Sanjaya comes from that side. So there are different kinds of dautya that we see. But an entire Duta Kavya was for the first time written by Kalidasa in the form of Meghaduta, and that became a model for everybody else following him. Idanim api tasyarthan upajivantyamiyatah. So there have been so many imitations, so many inspirations derived from him. So there has been Pavanuduta, Chandraduta, Chetoduta, Siddhaduta, Mrugankaduta, a contemporary poet, a poet who is contemporary to us. Abhiraj Rajendra Mishra has written this beautiful work, Mrugankaduta. It's using the moon as a messenger. When Abhiraj Rajendra Mishra was a professor at the Udayana University at the Bali, the island of Bali, Balidvipa in Indonesia, he sent this duta as a message to his mother who was living in India, I believe. Right? So, Idani Mapi, our Dr. Ganesh, who is here with us, he has written a Pratibha Duta. While the rest of the Duta Kavyas that we have has the Duta traveling through space, Dr. Ganesh has come up with a very novel concept where he makes the Duta travel through time. And he sends the Duta to Kalidasa, and the Pratibha itself, creative talent itself, that is made the Duta and is made to travel with time. So that was released very recently through a publication unit called the Praharsha. So this way, we have several such inspirations of the Meghaduta. And the metrical pattern that Kalidasa has used here, that is called the Mandakranta. The Mandakranta also was for the first time used by Kalidasa, and it was probably realized by Kalidasa. It was discovered by him upon deep contemplation. Dr. Ganesh, in one of his lectures, he beautifully shows how the chandas, this vritta itself becomes Vyanjaka Samagri, how the nature of the metrical pattern itself captures Vipralamba Shungara, Sambhoga Shungara, and a balanced Gruhasthashrama. So the Mandakranta Vritta has 4 gurus to start with, followed by 5 lagus, then a combination of lagu, 2 gurus, lagu and 2 gurus. So there is vilambagati, na 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 na, showing that expansion of time where you are craving for the company of your beloved. Na 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 na. So when the two are together, then time passes very quickly. We don't even realize when we are in love and we are enjoying. We don't realize the passage of time. And then when in the Grihastha Ashrama there is stability, balance that has been achieved, there is this Madhyamagati, a combination of Gurus and Lagus in almost equal proportions. So the Mandakranta is also a gift from Kālidāsa. Idanim api tasyarthan upajivantyamiyatah. So people have been using Mandakranta wherever they have to show some kind of dautya, show some kind of Vipralamba Shungara Prasanga, etc. Vipralamba Shungara is nothing but pain of separation between two beloveds. So with this introduction to the Meghaduta, we'll go into the verses of the Meghaduta itself. We'll start with the very first one.
Kaschit Kanta Virah Guruna Kanta Virah Guruna Swadhikarat Pramatah Swadhikarat Pramatah Shapena Astangamita Mahima Shapena Astangamita Mahima Varshabhogena Bhartu Yakshaha Chakre Janakatanaya Snana Punyodakeshu Snigdhachaya Tarushu Vasatim Ramagiryashrameshu Snigdhachaya Tarushu Vasatim Ramagiryashrameshu Kaschit Yakshaha Kanta Virah Guruna Varshabhogena Ramagiryashrameshu Vasatim Chakre
That was a very melodious recitation in the raga Kannada, which has that element of pathos. But still, there's a ray of hope. So Bharata, in the Natya Shastra, he discusses the difference between Vipralamba Shungara and Karuna Rasa. Vipralamba Shungara has a ray of hope for reunion. But in Karuna Rasa, it is complete pathos. It is a hopeless state where you are devoid of the company or where your beloved has passed away. So that element was very beautifully brought out by Dr. Ranjani through the Kannada Raga. And there is so much of Natyaya Manatas that she has brought in. Shapena Astangamita Mahima. So this is the story of a Yaksha, just like Dr. Naresh Keerthi beautifully spoke about the Meghaduta at the beginning, that has kind of lessened my burden of introducing this extraordinary work. So here, there is hardly any story in the Meghaduta, but still every poem, every verse in the Meghaduta is so entertaining. See, we usually think that only the presence of a story makes it aesthetically viable or enriches the rasaswada, etc. But even without a story, just with 2 or 3 lines of the story, all the 111 or 123 verses of the Meghaduta, they are extremely beautiful, They are like miniature paintings, and all of them together make a very huge, beautiful painting, the painting of the entire Indian subcontinent. The entire Bharatavarsha has been painted by Kālidāsa through an aerial view in the Meghaduta, giving a bird's eye view of all the different cultural aspects, all the different natural aspects of the country of Bharata. So here, in the very first verse of the Meghaduta, the poet is saying that a certain yaksha, a nameless yaksha, who, because of some kind of wrong deed that he did with respect to the job that he was assigned to, he encountered a curse. He was cursed by his boss, Kubera, and because of the curse, he lost his adhikara, the position of, that he had got, the reputed position that he had got. He lost that, and he was sent down to the earth. So what was the punishment? The punishment is not being stripped off of the position that he was in, but the punishment is being separated from his beloved. So here, throughout the poem, we see that is what he's craving for. Nowhere in the poem do we see that Yaksha is craving for the position that he had or the lavish bhoga that he had in the Svargaloka. Nowhere does he say that. He's craving for his Kanta. Kamakantau. She is somebody who used to give light, delight, brilliance to his life. So she is craving for her, the Yakshini, who is there in the Alakanagari, and he has come down here to the earth. Shapena Astangamita Mahima. When Dr. Ranjani was singing that, she brought down the lower sancharas, as in coming down from the top and moving around on the earth. So where does he stay on the earth? Ramagiri Ashrameshu. So Mallinatha also points to the Bahuvachana, the plural that has been brought here. Yaksha is restless. He's just moving around the different ashramas in this region called Ramagiri. Snigdha Chaya Tarushu. It is all cool, it is all soft there. And Janakatanaya Snana Punyodakeshu. See, all of us, we crave to go and take bath in the place where Sita actually bathed. But Yaksha is in this very pious, this very sacred place, but he's not happy. Ashrama is a place where you are supposed to be relaxed. You are not supposed to be tensed. But you can be relaxed when you are in the company of your beloved. Because he is away from her, this Janakatanaya Snana Punyodaka or Snigdachaya or Ramagiri ashramas, none of them are mattering to him. He is craving for her company. So that context has been set in the first verse. And here, just like with the case of Kālidāsa, we don't know the identity of this yaksha. Kaschit yakshaha. So it could be anybody, and by not giving a very specific persona to this person, the sadharinikarana, the universalization, more attention can be given to the emotion of this person, not the personality of this person. So generalization or universalization of the spirit has been brought about very beautifully by the very opening verse of Kālidāsa's Meghaduta. We'll go ahead to the second verse, the very second verse of Meghaduta. So it was a very difficult choice, which ones to choose and which one to leave. All the 123 verses of the Meghaduta are extremely beautiful. So Vasuki and Ranjani and myself, we had quite an amount of discussion. So we had to stick on to just about 8 verses. But at another opportunity, probably we'll have a session of all the verses, singing of all the verses. That would give us complete satisfaction, probably. This is just a trailer for what the Meghaduta actually is, I would say. We'll go to the next one, Tasmin Nadrao.
तस्मिन् अद्रौ कतिचित् अबला विप्रयुक्तः सकामी तस्मिन् अद्रौ कतिचित् अबला विप्रयुक्तः सकामी नीत्वा कनकवलयभ्रंशरिक्तप्रकोष्ठः आषाढस्य प्रथमदिवसे मेघम् आषाढस्य प्रथमदिवसे मेघमाश्लिष्टसानुं वप्रक्रीडा परिणतगजप्रेक्षणीयौ ददर्श तस्मिन् अद्रौ कतिचित् मासानि सकामि आषाढस्य प्रथमदिवसे अद्य मेघौ ददर्श.
Beautiful. On this day, long back, that is what was emphasized by Dr. Ranjani. Long back, on that particular mountain, the Ramagiri mountain, Megham Dadarsha. So the Yaksha saw a cloud, and a very apt raga was chosen for it. For that, a rainy season raga, Miyaki Malhar, was chosen and very beautifully rendered. He had already spent quite a few months. How many months doesn't come out very clearly here in this poem, but later on when we compare it with the Shapa, the Gamaya Chaturo, Lochane Mila Itva. So when we see that, we get to know that there are 4 more months remaining. So 8 months he must have completed already, because he was cursed to go away from his wife, from his Kanta, for 1 year. So 8 months have gotten elapsed. So the word Nitva and Masan were also brought out very beautifully by Dr. Ranjani. So he has lost his power and he has come down here. Okay, fine. Yeah. So he has come down here and he has been so craving for his beloved that he is probably not even eating well. So when you are in great amount of when you're depressed, you don't have the motivation to even eat. Because he hasn't eaten well, probably, the bracelet that he was wearing, that has fallen off from his wrist. So you see the very famous stamp which was in the circulation in the past. There also you see that bracelet which has fallen down on the ground. The golden bracelet had fallen down. And on the first day of Āṣāḍha, thank you. This first day of Āṣāḍha is also significant because the rainy season, even today, and more so in the past, it is a very difficult season because rains are usually unpredictable. It might rain very heavily, and there might be quite a lot of natural destruction. There could be destruction of human property. It could even lead to death. Even today, that happens. So until now, Yaksha probably somehow controlled his anxiety, controlled his emotion, his pathos. But now Āṣāḍha has come. This is when the distress of his beloved, his Yakshini, may increase. And it is because of the clouds which will send down torrential rains that there could be some kind of anxiety. This very cloud, which could potentially kind of cause anxiety, he uses that as a messenger to communicate a very peaceful message, not to worry, I'll come back. See, even today in the Āṣāḍha Masa, not many of these ritualistic events are held. An Upanayana or a Vivaha is usually not done in the Āṣāḍha Masa because it's not a very comfortable season. So therefore, he took a precautionary measure at the very first day of the Āṣāḍha, and fortunately he had encountered a cloud on that very first day. And how did the cloud appear to him? It appeared to him like an elephant which was engaged in what is called the Vapra Krida. So that is the butting sport, or where the elephant, with its tusk, it digs out the soil. So when it is oncoming monsoons, we would have observed that dogs behave in a certain way, they scratch on the ground, and wild boar, they behave in certain ways, and elephants behave in certain ways. So here, he looked at the cloud and he thought that it almost looks like an elephant. So looking at this statement, scholars kind of infer a story behind why Yaksha was cursed. In fact, the story why he was cursed doesn't matter much. It is of not much significance. But if people are really curious, I'll just tell one version of the story. So Yaksha was the gardener of Kubera. Kubera works under the guidance, under the overlordship of Indra, who is the Svargadi Devata. So once, when he was taking care of the garden, the Udyana of Kubera, the Airavata of Indra happened to come there, apparently. So he was worried, should I stop my boss's vehicle, or should I protect my boss's garden? So it's a conflict of interest. So he decided that it's okay to get cursed or to gain the anger, gain the wrath of the lower boss than gain the wrath of the higher boss. So this smaller boss may curse me, but the higher boss may give me a higher position. So he might have had all that intentions, right? So he let the Airavata, the elephant of Indra, trample Kubera's garden. But Kubera was, of course, very annoyed. He's, after all, Dhanadi Devata, Artha Devata. So any of his Artha Sampatti gets destroyed, he gets very angry. So the Adhikara, the position that Yaksha was in, that was stripped off and he was sent onto the earth. So this cloud coming there and Yaksha imagining that to be an elephant has this psychology behind it. That is what some scholars say. There are other stories also. Interested people may dig into it deeper. But anyway, we'll go ahead with the Meghaduta itself. Now, having seen that there is a Megha, a cloud, Kamartahi Prakruti Krupanas Chetana Chetaneshu. So there are so many Arthantara Nyasa Alankaras which come throughout the Meghaduta. Some of them were, it was also mentioned, a passing reference was made by Dr. Naresh as well. So people who are in love, they cannot distinguish between animate and inanimate objects. They go really mad. And he thought that this can be a potential communicator of my message to my Yakshini. So he tries to entice the cloud, and he tells the cloud that you are not alone. You will have companions during your journey. You don't have to feel bored. And you're born in some extraordinary lineage, Pushkara Vartakanam. You're born in the lineage of such extraordinary clouds. And you are so high, you have that high vantage, and at high level you travel in the skies. And who are your companions? So that is said in other words. We'll go through to that.
Mandam nudati pavanaha chanukulo yatha tvam mandam nudati pavanaha chanukulo yatha tvam vamaschayam nadati madhuram 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 vamaschayam nadati madhuram chatakaste sagandhaha garbhadhanakshana parichayat noonam abadhamala sevishyante nayana subhagam khe bhavatam balakaha tvam nayana subhagam शलाकाः आबद्धमालाः सेविष्यन्ते
Beautiful rendering in the raga Dvijavanti. So there is so much of Natyayamanata that has been brought about in the very rendition by her, by Dr. Ranjani. There's so much of dramatic effect. If this music was present during Kālidasa's times, I'm sure this is how he would also have liked his poems to be tuned. So much of emotion, so much of sattva has been brought about in her singing. So the verse is saying that you don't have to put any efforts, O cloud, to go. The wind will push you. You can swim across the skies. Slowly and slowly it will push you. There's no, actually he's in an urgency to send the message. But he doesn't want to give that panic to the cloud. Slowly you can move and the wind will push you. Mandam mandam. Nudati pamanas chanukulo yatatvam. It will favor you. There'll be no unsavory winds blowing in the wrong direction. It will motivate you further to go. And it's not just the wind. There is also a song in the sky, and it is the Chatakas. The song of the Chatakas will accompany you. The Nada Madhurya, the Madhura Nada of the Chataka will be a companion to you. And Chatakas are also said to be Sagandaha. They'll feel proud by traveling at your height. And also, they share the same emotion as you. So, according to the Kavisamaya in India, according to the poetic conventions, the Chataka is a bird which lives in water, but it craves only for the purest drops of water which are from the clouds, direct rain waters. That is what the Chataka birds drink. So therefore, it will come with you, craving for your company. So it is craving for you. It will come as your companion. And you are Nayana Subhaga. You are very good looking. So you'll have to appreciate the messenger. You'll have to praise the qualities if your work has to be done. So you are Nayana Subhaga. Subhaga also means somebody who is very well approachable. I can approach you. I can convey my thoughts and my feelings to you. You will understand it. And you are already beautiful. To you, there will be a garland of Balaka Pakshis. Cranes will become a garland to you, and you'll be escorted in the skies to the Alakanagari, Garbhadana Kshanaparachayan. So Kalidasa knows the mating season of the birds, when they carry and when they lay eggs, etc. So this is the breeding season of the cranes. That also he's saying here. So with that, you will have to move towards Alakanagari. That is the context with which he has said this. We'll go ahead and we'll try to see a couple of verses where from the perspective of the cloud, how the earth will appear. We'll just have to, we'll try to have a look at that. We'll move ahead with the next one.
Ratnachaya Vyatikara Iva Preksham Yetat Purastat Ratnachaya Vyatikara Iva Preksham Yetat Purastat Valmikagrat Prabhavati Dhanuhu Dhanuh Kandam Akhandalasya Valmikagrat Prabhavati Dhanuh Kandam Akhandalasya Yena Shyamam Vapu Atitaram Kantim बर्हेणेव स्फुरितरुचिना गोपवेशस्य विष्णोः गोपवेशस्य विष्णोः
Extraordinary. I'm in a very difficult position. I don't know whether should I creatively comment on the beauty of Ranjani's rendition or the beauty of Kālidasa's verses. While I'm trying to do one, I'm almost forgetting the other. So this is in the raga Abheri, Gopaveshasya Vishnoho. So that phrase comes at the end of this verse. So Abhiras are the cowherd men. And the raga that they used is Abheri. So that is how this raga has come about. And here in this verse, the poet is comparing the cloud, the hue of the cloud, the color of the cloud, to be the color of Bhagavan Sri Krishna when he had come down to the earth as a Gopala Balaka. So that dark complexion of Krishna is the dark complexion of the cloud. And what about his peacock feather that Krishna carries on the top of his head? So when the cloud is moving in the skies, there is a rainbow which comes out from the tip of an anthill. Valmikagrat Prabhavati Danuhu. So from the tip of an anthill, which is in Valmika, Kandam Danuhu Kandam Akandalasya. So the Indra Chapa, so Indra Dhanus, the rainbow, sprouts out from there. This is again another poetic convention, a Kavi Samaya. So it is thought that in the Valmika, in the anthill, there are snakes, there are nagas, and on the top of the snake's head, there is Nagamani. So the light gets diffracted from there, and that is how the rainbow comes. So that is what is the Kavisamaya. But practically also in the rainy season, we see several rainbows in the skies, obviously, because of the diffraction of light. So while bringing that Kandam Akandalasya, Danuhu, she brought in that, Dr. Ranjani brought in the movement of the swaras, going up and coming down, bringing the effect of the rainbow. And while coming down, she brought in all the Sapta Swaras also, indicating the 7 colors of the rainbow. Similarly, in the previous one, Ke Bhavantam Balakaha, when she sung that in Dvijavanti, there for the word Ke, which means Akashe, in the Akasha, she brought in so much of expanse. And there are so many different kinds of things which happen in the Akasha. All that was brought through the Sanchari that she sang. So this rainbow will give you the complexion of Krishna, you are already of the complexion of Krishna, and the rainbow will become a peacock feather on your head. That will give you the charm of Krishna. So this theme he brings in several places in the Meghaduta itself. Shangrino Varna Chaure, you have stolen the color of Krishna, Kālidāsa says, Yaksha says to the cloud, and Kālidāsa is speaking through Yaksha. Varna Matrena Krishna. So only by your color you are Krishna, etc. So all of these images are brought. So he spoke about Ramagiri. Now he has spoken about Krishna. Later he also speaks about Shiva. Looking at you, the devotees of Shiva will think that you resemble their Lord's throat. Bartrukkantas chaviriti ganaihi sadaram vikshyamanaha. They will see you with a lot of reverence, with a lot of bhakti, with a lot of devotion. See, in the entire Meghaduta, at several places, the Megha, the cloud, becomes the Vibhava for several people on earth. At other places, Vibhava is the trigger of emotion. So the cloud itself triggers emotions in different people in different places. So in one place, the agriculturists feel very thankful looking at the cloud that there are rains coming in. At another place, when the cloud is coming, the women who are in the search of their nayikas, they are in the look of their beloveds, they kind of get tensed. There is some amount of tension, but without lightning, by giving lightning but no sound, their paths are enlightened by the cloud. So there is a ray of hope also which is coming because of the cloud. So the cloud becomes the Vibhava at several places. In other places, the earth itself becomes a Vibhava for the cloud. So these are the beautiful things on earth, and you can imagine all of these this way. Yaksha tells the cloud. So there are emotions superimposed on the cloud. So the cloud itself is personified. So there is this Upachara Vakrata which comes out throughout the Meghaduta. And although these are the Vibhavas, the Sthayi Bhava of Vipradamba Shungara is present throughout the Khandakavya. And this Meghaduta itself has become a model for Khandakavyas later on, one of the first and the best kinds of Khandakavya. There are references to several different deities which we come across in Kālidasa's Meghaduta. We saw Rama, we saw Krishna, I mentioned about Shiva. We come across Kanda, we come across Balarama, and we come across Arjuna, where he fought in the Kurukshetra, and several other ones. About Shiva and Parvati, it comes in many places, even in the Uttara Megha. So although there is no particular story in the entire Meghaduta, there are so many different stories brought within the context of the Meghaduta. So when you are going across this entire geography of Brihat Bharata, so all these the Puranic landscape of India is brought together beautifully through the Meghaduta. So how Balarama pulled the river Ganga, how Arjuna fought with the Kauravas, and how Kumara or Skanda plays in a certain garden, and the peacock feathers of Kumara is put on the head of Parvati as a very Vatsalya Bhava, the affection that she has towards her son, and also the Vahana of her son. So all these Puranic motifs are brought in through the Meghaduta. We'll go to the next one. The favorite place of Kalidasa is Ujjaini. So that is how it is thought that it could be his birthplace also. So although you are supposed to go and convey the message, the cloud is supposed to go and convey the message as soon as possible, even though there is a deviation, don't miss seeing or visiting Ujjaini, he says. So there is some amount of emotion that he has with respect to this place. We'll have a look at that. Vakraf Pantha.
Vakrah Panthaah Vakrah Panthaah Vakrah Panthaah Yadapi bhavatah prasthitasya uttarasham saudhotsarga pranaya vimuko masma bhuhu ujjainyah Chakitai Vidyutamaspurita Chakitai Tatra Paurangananam Naramase Lochanaihi Vanchitosi Lochanaihi Vanchitosi.
Justice was done to every word here. Vakraf Pantha, even if you have to take a curved path, even if you have to take a circuitous path, even if you have to deviate from your usual path, it's okay to go to Ujjaini. But also people who study weather, they say that the clouds which come from the southwestern direction, they naturally slightly deviate around the region of Ujjaini in Madhya Pradesh apparently. So Yaksha is telling the cloud that at any cost you should go to this place, Ujjaini. And there, on the top of very tall buildings in Ujjaini, you'll see very beautiful women whose eyes are like lightnings. They are like Vidyut, they are like Minchu, like lightnings. And if you do not observe the beauty of their wavy glances, then you should consider yourself cheated. You have lost the most beautiful thing on earth. So therefore, you should go to this Ujjaini, he says. And while bringing out the word Vidyut, all the birkas were brought in very beautifully by Dr. Ranjani, and also for the Lola Panga, the wavy glances of the women, that was also very magically. Riti Gaula, in the raga Riti Gaula, which itself, the raga itself is Vakra, so that was brought in very well. We'll go ahead with the next one. We are left with only about 15 minutes and we are only halfway through, so we'll move ahead quickly.
पटु मदकलं कूजितं सारसानां दीर्घी कुर्वन् पटु मदकलं प्रत्यूषेषु स्फुटितकमलामोदमैत्रीकषायः यत्र स्त्रीणां हरति सुरतग्लानिम् अङ्गानुकूलः यत्र सुरतग्लानिमङ्गानुकूलः शिप्रावातः प्रियतम इव प्रार्थना चाटुकारः शिप्रावातः प्रियतम इव प्रार्थना चाटुकारः
This is rendered in the Raga Pahadi, extraordinary. Soft, gentle, convincing, seductive Shringara. The effect has been brought out very well. I guess it doesn't need a commentary. All the words have been made justice by Dr. Ranjani. So, what else do you see there around the region of Ujjaini and as you go further? So, in the morning, as the lotus bloom, there is the smell, the fragrance, which is carried by the wind. The wind which is blowing from the Shripra, the name of the river is Shipra or even Kshipra, which flows very quickly. So the movement of the river was also beautifully indicated by Ranjani in her different sancharas that she brought in. And the wind which is blowing from the river carries the fragrance of the lotuses and it is elongated, the sound of the sarasa pakshis. It also comes with a sound. So there is fragrance, there is coolness and sound. The music of the sarasa pakshis is elongated by the wind. And that comes and it strikes the ear. It very softly cajoles the women who have experienced some kind of physical pleasure with their beloved one, and they have become tired of the physical pleasure that they have with their beloved ones. So this wind comes and soothes them, just like a priyatama, like a beloved trying to convince and cajole. The wind does that activity. So the wind has three properties, like I already mentioned here. It is cool, it is melodious, the wind carries the melody, and it also has a fragrance. So at a time you're just using one agent here, using one instrument, 3 indriyas, 3 sense organs are catered to by Kālidāsa. So one being the ear, the other being the nose, where the smell or the fragrance is felt, and other being the coolness, which the Shipra Vata, that brings, the softness, the coolness, etc. And the sight of this woman, so there is a visual imagery also. So at a time, Kālidāsa caters to many senses. And if you imagine the taste of the lotus, then the Kashaya, that is also brought in there. So that was beautifully rendered in Pahadi. We'll go ahead to the Uttaramegha. So the cloud moves on and it reaches Alakanagari, and there this Yaksha proudly describes the nature of his house, which is near Kubera's garden in Alakanagari. So he says that there is this Mandara Vriksha, which was like Krutaka Putraka, like an adopted son by the Yakshini. The Mandara Vriksha was taken care of. And Dr. Naresh was mentioning about Dirga Panga, where that was also taken care of like an adopted child. Putri Krutauso Vrishabhadvajena, that comes in the Kumara Sambhava as well. Devadaru, where Yo Hema Kumbhas Tana Vistrutasam, Skandasya Matav Payasam Rasagnaha. So when even before Parvati gave birth to her first son Skanda, she had adopted a child, the Devadaru Vriksha, and she was feeding the Vriksha, with this tree, with her breast milk. So much of motherly affection she had got on this one Vriksha, and through this one Vriksha, the Sadharani Karana of Parvati's, Jaganmata's Vatsalya is seen over the entire world. So this adoption or this empathy, sympathy, the affection, the compassion that humans should have with respect to nature, that is brought out very beautifully in Kālidāsa, by Kālidāsa in several of his works. So here, in front of Yaksha's house, we get to know that there was a Mandara Vriksha. Behind his house, there was a pond with emerald steps. There was a Krida Shaila. Krida Shaila is an artificial mountain made for their sport, and it had the Indranila Mani. There were sapphires on the top of it, etc. A very beautiful house. So when you go there, before you go there, make sure that she's awake. If she's sleeping, if Yakshini is sleeping, don't disturb her from her sleep. That is what Yaksha is trying to say. If she has actually fallen asleep, then what is the use of waking her up and saying that there is nothing to worry? Only when you are not worried will you actually fall asleep. So that momentary happiness that she has, don't disturb that. So he says that, and we'll listen to it in the next verse.
तस्मिन् काले जलद यदि सा लब्धनिद्रा सुखा स्यात् तस्मिन् काले जलद यदि सा लब्धनिद्रा सुखा अन्व्यास्यैनां स्तनित विमुखो याममात्रं सहस्व मा भूदस्याः प्रणयिनी मयि स्वप्नलब्धे कथञ्चित् सद्यः कण्ठच्युतभुजलताग्रन्थि गाढोपगूढौ अस्याः कथञ्चित् स्वप्नलब्धे मयि गाढोपगूढं स्तनितविमुखो याममात्रं सहस्व.
It was sung in the raga Neelambari. The raga itself has that lullaby kind of tune. Ragas have been used like Vyanjaka Samagri very beautifully by Ranjani. I'll just briefly tell the summary. if in her dream she might be visualizing me in her company. So she might have a dream where both of us in a very tight embrace. So you should not go there and become the cause of separation between us. In her dream, in fact, a similar feeling as is there in the Swapnanka of Swapnavasavadatta. Udayana says, Yadi tavadayam swapno dhanyam aprati bodhanam. So let me not even wake up. The sweet itself was sweeter than the dream itself was sweeter than reality. So don't disturb her sweet dreams. Labdha nidra sukha syat. Elsewhere he also says that she would be very tired. All that kajal, that colorium in her eyes, that would have gotten worn away. She would also have become thin, etc. He would have said. But so there is no sukha for her in the Jagruta Avastha. She's not happy when she's awake because she's craving for her beloved's company. But in the sleep, she might have got that sukha. She might have got that momentary joy. So don't disturb her from her sleep. Wait for a yama. Yama could be about 3 or 4 hours. Just wait there. See, the yaksha is also conscious that there are other duties that the cloud actually has to do. It has to pour down rain to the entire earth. It's not meant to be his personal messenger. So it is a public, a universal property. The cloud is serving the entire world. But here, for his sake, yaksha is requesting it to wait for a yama. Just for 3 to 4 hours wait, and once she wakes up, then you can convey the message that I have for her. The message is also very simple. It's not anything complicated at all. There are only 4 more months. Lochane Meelayitva. Close your eyes. Just by the time you close and open your eyes, the 4 months would have elapsed, and I'll come back. I'm all safe here. So that is what he wants to convey there. So the message is simple, but wait to convey the message, he says. And finally, we'll move on to the last verse of the Meghaduta. And with that, we'll conclude, probably. We had also the plans of taking some verses from the Shakuntalam and Kumarasambhava. I think today's time will not permit, but yeah, we'll do it on another occasion. Yes, Apyanyasmin Kālamasādhya Kāle. So, Mahakala's puja can also be done on another day through Kumarasambhava, Vācana and Vyākhyāna, perhaps.
अनुचित प्रार्थना वर्तिनो में ये तत् कृत्वा प्रियम अनुचित प्रार्थना वर्तिनो में सौहार्दात्वा विधुर इति वा मायि अनुक्रोश बुद्ध्या इष्टान् देशान् जलद विचरा प्रवृषा प्रावृषा संभृतश्री क्षणमपि चते विद्युता 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 विप्रयोगः एतत् कृत्वा मा भूदेवं क्षणमपि च ते विद्युता विप्रयोग
This is extremely beautifully rendered in the Sindhu Bhairavi Raga. The rendition itself had a lot of suggestion. Here in the verse, the Yaksha is telling the cloud, the Megha, that I hope that you never suffer a separation from your beloved like I have suffered. So he had been separated from his Yakshini. So your beloved, O cloud, your beloved is the lightning. So Vidyut is your beloved. Let there be no Viprayoga from your beloved. So to bring that effect, the raga Sindhu Bhairavi was used. In Sindhu Bhairavi, all the swaras are present. No swara feels Viprayoga, that it is missing the raga. All the 22 Shrutis are present in the Sindhu Bhairavi Raga that was selected with a great amount of auchitya, with a great amount of propriety. So he's saying, I know that you, cloud, you are meant for a bigger purpose. You are meant for the welfare of the entire world. But I am using you for my personal welfare, for my personal benefit. So therefore, I'm using you for a non-befitting purpose. It doesn't fit your stature. But however, this one moment, this one time, consider me either as your friend or have compassion for me, for just like you have compassion over a person who is missing his beloved. Either out of friendship or out of compassion, just do this one deed for me. And then after you have done this one deed for me, you can go wherever you want. And in the rainy season, you'll fill up your body. You'll feel even more, you'll look even more full. And you can go to any place that you want. But wherever you go, I hope, I wish that you will always be in the company of your beloved. So we, Ranjani and I, wish that all of us are always in the company of Kalidasa. Let there be no Viprayoga from Kalidasa. Namaste. Kave Viprayoga. Absolutely.
Dharma Shastra needs some amendments. So if someone invites such scholars or artists, but gives very less amount of time for the performance, it should be considered as one of the Mahapatakas. So
no, Kalidasa has to be given our lifetime. The full life he'll have to get committed.
And next year definitely we will do Ahoratra, Vyācāna and Vācana and Vyākhyāna. So definitely, so I request now we will go back to the previous stage. I don't know how to extend my gratitude. So many times I feel that Abhidha Vritti becomes weak or weakest in extending gratitude. So better we surrender ourselves to Vyanjana Vritti. So to both Dr. Ranjani Vasuki and Sri Arjun Bharadwaj, Bhuishtham Vam Nama Uktim Vidhema. Now I request, so we will go to listen to Professor H.V. Nagaraj Rao. We have a very good set of panelists, so young scholars at one side and senior scholar like H.V. Nagaraj Rao is presiding the event. Now it is a time to listen to him. Before that, I request my colleague, Dr. Vinayak Rajat to introduce him.
Shri Mahaganadhipataye Namaha, Shri Kavikula Gurave Namaha. It's indeed a pleasure to introduce Gurunam Guruhu, Shri H.V. Nagaraj Rao ji, but it is also a difficult task to do. It is like introducing a Chataka Pakshi, what is the rainwater? So here Sahridaya, everyone knows about him, and I am trying to introduce him, but still Guru Vandanam is the adhikara of a student, of a shishya. So I will do a bit, whatever is collected from the voluminous work, a bit of that from a bindu of Sagara will be collected here, is going to be presented here. Vidwan H.V. Nagaraj Rao is a world-renowned authority on Sanskrit grammar and poetics. Born in 1942 in Somanahalli, Kolar, Dr. Rao received his early education in Vācana and Alankara Shastra from Maharaja Samskrita Mahapathshala, Mysuru. He obtained his master's degree in Asian languages from University of Washington and another master's degree in Sanskrit from the University of Mysuru. He went on to receive his D.Litt from Tumkur University, Karnataka. Dr. Rao worked as a senior researcher at the Oriental Research Institute, Mysore, and as the deputy editor of Ancient Indian Literature Project of the Sahitya Academy, New Delhi. He has served as a visiting faculty at the University of Chicago, University of Wisconsin, and a fellow at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and as a visiting professor at Karnataka University, Bengaluru. Proficient in Sanskrit, Kannada, Telugu, Hindi, and English, Dr. Rao has more than 100 publications to his credit in the form of dramas, novels, shataka, short stories, commentaries on poems, and translations. He is the editor of numerous Sanskrit works and has translated many Sanskrit works into English and Kannada, and vice versa, including Mahima Bhatta's Vyakti Viveka and Ruyaka's Alankara Sarvasva into Kannada. The late Mysore King Sri Krishnaraja Odayar Sri Tattvanidhi into English. His original works include Sanskrit plays titled Vidula Putriyam, Samudyata, and Dampatya Kalaha. So I am also a married person, so Dampatya Kalaha. Short stories titled Varanaveshanam and Malavika. The biography of Basavappa Shastri and Shivakumar Swami. He is the honorary editor of Sudharma, the only Sanskrit daily newspaper in the world. He is a recipient of several awards and recognitions. Prominent among them are the prestigious Central Sahitya Academy Award for the Sanskrit translation of Bhairavpa's Sartha, Vyasa Maharshi Prashasti, and the Certificate of Honor from the President of India. He has been honored with the Bharati Tirtha Puraskara from Sri Sharada Peetham, Sringeri, and has been bestowed the titles of Kavya Shastra Vichakshana by Sri Swarnavalli Matha and Asthana Vidwana by Sri Ganapati Sachidananda Ashrama, Mysore. This is just a tip, just a drop of water from the ocean. There's a lot of things which can be presented as an introduction of the Guru, but time does not allow that. So let's directly go and listen to him, and that itself is a great opportunity which we are getting here. Sir, we request you to address the audience.
Vidyakairavakauphudīm Shrutishiras-simanta-mukta-manim Dāran Padmabhuvastriloka-jananim Vande Giram Devatam Yatpadabja-namaskriyaha Sukritinam Sarasvata Prakriya Bijanyasa Bhuvo Bhavanti Kavita Natyaika Jivatava. अस्याम सभायाम विश्वविद्यानिलयस्य कार्यक्रमः इति आङ्ग्लभाषायामेव वक्तव्यम् इति नियमः कस्मात् कृतः? भारतदेशस्य संस्कृतिं प्रद्योतयितुम् अयं नूतनः विश्वविद्यानिलयः कार्यक्रमं कृतवान्. कालिदासस्य विषये कार्यक्रमः. कालिदासस्य प्रिया भाषा का? तां भाषां विहाय यस्यां कस्याञ्चित् भाषायां यस्याः परिचयः वक्तॄणामपि नास्ति, श्रोतॄणामपि नास्ति. तत्र प्रयत्नः कस्मात् क्रियते इति कश्चन प्रश्नः. I am actually feeling guilty today to be here and to be speaking after the wonderful rendition of Meghaduta by Dr. Ranjani and also Dr. Arjun. After such a program, actually we should all go back home only thinking about that. Nothing else should come here. A president's speech is actually some obstacle for our rasanubhava. We could have gone like that, only filled with those ideas, with those ragas. Both of them have presented such a wonderful program, and I was extremely impressed by the fact that while she was singing, not a single mistake, not a single error was done. See, in many places I have heard, while the singers are singing the Meghaduta, Kaschit Kanta, Kaschit, and somebody is raising the objection, you should say Kachit Kanta, not Kaschit Kanta. Kanta is in feminine gender, and how can Kaschit come there? But exactly everything without making any dosha in the samasa, or when connecting the verbs and the nouns, everything was so proper, so fine, that I would have liked to be sitting here without going to Mysuru today until the midnight, if she would sing like that only. Tadrisham ganam, tadrisham vyākhyānam. Loke kim bhavati, yatra ganam madhuram, tatra vyākhyānam parusham bhavati. Kvachita vyākhyākarta atīva panditaha, गायिका गानं जानाति किन्तु भाषायाः विषये अवधानं न ददाति. तथा मा भूत् एतादृशः संयोगः रत्नकाञ्चनयोरिव. तादृशः संयोगः अद्य साक्षात्कृतः इति मैसूरुनगरात् एतावत् दूरं यत् आगमनं मम जातं, मेघस्य रामगिरेः अलकानगरं प्रति यावत् प्रयाणं जातं, तादृशं प्रयाणमपि अत्र सार्थकमेव. तत्र आदौ तावत् अस्माभिः नरेशमहोदयस्य भाषणं श्रुतं. कालिदासस्य काव्यानि शतशः अस्माभिः पठितानि, मया तु पठितानि एव, कदाचित् पाठितानि च. तथापि तस्य भाषणे नूतनाः अंशाः दृष्टाः. तत् कालिदासस्य विशेषो वा नरेशस्य विशेषो वा न जानामि. कालिदासस्य काव्येषु तादृशी शक्तिः अस्ति यत् कोटिः पंडिताः व्याख्यान्तु, तथापि तत्र नूतनाः अंशाः भवन्ति. किन्तु तादृशान् अंशान् द्रष्टुम् अस्माकं चक्षुः अस्ति वा? तन्नास्ति. तादृशं चक्षुः नरेशस्य वर्तते. तत्र तादृशाः विषयाः तेन प्रतिपादिताः इति अतितमाम् अहं तुष्टोऽस्मि. कालिदासस्य काव्येषु पदे पदे नूतनाः विषयाः सन्ति. स्निग्धच्छाया तरुषु वसतिं रामगिर्याश्रमेषु. छायातरुः इति शब्दः अस्ति. तस्य कोऽर्थः? छाया वृक्षो न मेरुः स्यात् इति कोशः तत्र दत्तः. छाया शब्दः स्त्रीलिङ्गे वर्तते. तरुशब्दः पुल्लिङ्गे वर्तते. छाया तरुषु इति अचेतनेष्वपि तत्र स्निग्धत्वं वर्तते. स्निग्धच्छाया तरुषु. एवं स्थिते यः चेतनः तादृशः यक्षः यक्षीं प्रति कीदृशीं प्रीतिं वहति स्म तत् द्योतयितुं तादृशा एव शब्दाः तेन प्रयुक्ताः. यदा रञ्जनी गायति स्म तदा दीर्घीकुर्वन् पटुमदकलं कूजितं सारसानामिति तत्र दीर्घाः एव तस्मिन् श्लोके कियन्तः प्रयुक्ताः. तस्य एकैकस्यापि दीर्घस्य कः अन्तरार्थः अस्ति सः सर्वः अपि रागेण अभिव्यञ्जितः. तस्मात् तस्यै मम नमस्कारसहस्रं समर्पयामि. तत्र व्याख्याकाराणां वस्तुतः लोके बहुत्र मया दृष्टं तेषां शब्दज्ञानं सम्यक् अस्ति, किन्तु अयं रागः कथं तत्र परिणमति, कीदृशं प्रभावं सः रागः श्रोत्रयोः सिञ्चति इति व्याख्याकारैः न ज्ञायते. अस्माकम् अर्जुनेन सः सव्यसाची इति वक्तव्यं. अर्जुनः इति नाम तस्य मातापितृभ्यां यथार्थतया कृतं. तादृशं व्याख्यानं श्रोतुम् अवकाशः अस्माभिः लब्धः इति एतादृशस्य चाणक्यविश्वविद्यालयस्य कृते कार्तज्ञं हार्दम् अस्माभिः प्रकटनीयम्. कालिदासस्य जयन्ती कदा आचर्यते, कालिदासस्य दिनं कदा आचर्यते, केवलं सम्प्रदायानुसारेण कस्मिंश्चित् दिवसे तथा क्रियते. किन्तु यदा सहृदयः कालिदासस्य काव्यं पठति, कालिदासस्य काव्यं शृणोति, अत्र एकैकस्मिन्नपि पदे एतावत् पीयूषं वर्तते, एतावत् अमृतम् अस्ति इति ज्ञात्वा आनन्दति, तद्दिनं वस्तुतः कालिदासदिनम्. तादृशं दिनम् अस्माभिः पुनः पुनः लभ्यताम् इति मम आशा वर्तते. यदि यथा अर्जुनेन उक्तं तथा एतादृशानां काव्यानां वाचनं व्याख्यानं च एकस्मिन् दिवसे दिनद्वये वा भवति चेत् प्लेट् मील्स् इति कथयन्ति तथा भवति. किन्तु वयं वाञ्छामः विवाहभोजनं. तत्र समस्तमपि लभ्यतां, पूर्णतः लभ्यताम्, आकण्ठं वयं भुञ्ज्महे. एतदस्माभिः अपेक्षते. दिस् इस् वाट् वी actually want. And so such programs, even though they are rare, they are actually like the day when there is Amrita Vrishti. Kālidasa's works, the 7 works, actually, if you go to the Raghuvamsha, how many interesting things, each one is so precious, they are there. And the university, it has a special department for this purpose, the Indian Knowledge Systems Department, and therefore it should give the opportunity to the great scholars, not only from Bengaluru or Karnataka, but even the scholars from outside, they should be invited. And we should be enlightened by them. And for this purpose, I am congratulating and also I am expressing my deep gratitude to Ramakrishna Pejattaya and his colleagues. I do not know. You see, I had met him once in Sringeri, I think. He was performing Ashtavadhana, and probably I was doing Aprastuta Prasanga, as I do everywhere. Not only in Ashtavadhanas, even in other places, my work is Aprastuta Prasanga only. And remembering it, he was kind enough to invite me and to see all of you here, even though the number may be less. I am extremely happy because I am an admirer of happy human faces. I see them here. Ekaikasyapi atra upasthitihi sahasrajana upasthitehe samana. Ataha bhavadbhyaha madiyam kartajñam nivedya viramami. Namaskaraha.
प्राक् तस्मिन् अवधाने मया एवं किञ्चित् पद्यं कृतमासीत् यस्य वल्गुवदनं नवनीडं शब्दशास्त्रनिचयस्य समस्या इति एतेषां परिचयरूपेण मया कृतमासीत् तदेव पद्यमत्र वक्तुमिच्छामि एतेषां यार मुखौ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಶಬ್ದಗಳೆಂಬ ಹಕ್ಕಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಗೂಡಿನಂತಿರಿದೆಯೋ ಅಂತಹ ನಾಗರಾಜರಾಯರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಶಬ್ದಗಳೆಂಬ ಮರಿ ಹಕ್ಕಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಗೂಡಿನಂತಿದೆ ಅಂತಹ ನಾಗರಾಜರಾಯರಿಗೆ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತ. ನಾನು ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಕೂಡ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ದಶೆಯಿಂದಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತವನ್ನು ಕೇಳಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದರೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು ಎನ್ನುವಂತಹ ಭಾವನೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಂದಿತ್ತು. ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ವೈದುಷ್ಯವಂತೂ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ತಿಳಿದಿರುವಂಥದ್ದೇ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅಂತಹ ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸರು ಹಿರಿಯರು, ನಾನು ಆವಾಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಹಿರಿಯರ ಆಧ್ಯಕ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಯುವ ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸರ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಮಾತು ಮತ್ತು ಹಾಡು ಇವೆರಡರಿಂದ ತುಂಬ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮೂಡಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಮತ್ತು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವೂ ಕೂಡ ಮೂಡಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದಾಗಿ ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಈಗ ಅವರನ್ನು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಅಭಿವ್ಯಂಜಿಸುವಂತಹ ಸಮಯ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಎಚ್.ವಿ. ನಾಗರಾಜರಾಯರಿಗೆ ಆಚಾರ್ಯಾः महता प्रेम्णा ते संस्कृतं स्पृहयन्ति न केवलं संस्कृताय स्पृहयन्ति संस्कृतं स्पृहयन्ति इति विश्वसिमि. तस्मात् तेभ्यः अहं संस्कृतेनैव वचसा अहं कृतज्ञताम् अहं निवेदयामि. दूरात् आगताः तेभ्यः अहं प्रणामान् विनिवेद्य I request Ashok sir to अस्माकं प्रीतेः अभिव्यञ्जकमिदं किञ्चिदुपायनं गृह्णन्तु इति अहं निवेदयामि. अशोक सर तत्र यू कैन बी अल्ले इरि. नौ I request Ashok sir to Naresh sir. Arjun Bharadwaj, Dr. Ranjani Vasuki, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ನರೇಶ್ ಕೀರ್ತಿ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದವರು. ಬಹಳ ಸಮೀಪದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವಿಬ್ಬರೂ ಕೂಡ ನೆರೆಮನೆಯವರ ಹಾಗೆ ಹಿಂದಿನ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದವರು. ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಇದ್ದುಕೊಂಡು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಅವರ ಅಧ್ಯಯನದ ಆಳ ಅಗಲ ಎರಡೂ ಕೂಡ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟವಾದದ್ದು. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು ನಾನು ಅವರಿಂದ ತಿಳಿದುಕೊಳ್ಳುವಂತಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅಂಥವರು ಇವತ್ತು ನಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರುವುದು ವಿಶೇಷ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಣಾಮಪೂರ್ವಕ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ನಾನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ರಂಜನಿಯವರ, ನಾನು ಆವಾಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಇಂತಹ ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನಗಳಿಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ಇಂತಹ ವಾಚನಗಳಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಇಷ್ಟು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಸಮಯ ಕೊಟ್ಟದ್ದು ಅದು ಮಹಾಪಾತಕ. ಅದರ ಪ್ರಾಯಶ್ಚಿತ್ತ ನಾನು ಖಂಡಿತ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳಲೇಬೇಕು ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ. ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಪ್ರಣಾಮಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಅರ್ಜುನ್ ಭಾರದ್ವಾಜ್ ಅವರದ್ದು ಕೂಡ ವೈದುಷ್ಯ ಬಹುಮುಖವಾದದ್ದು. ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಇಂದು ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ದಿವಸಾಫ್ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ರಮಣೀಯ ಎನ್ನುವುದಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಣಾಮಪೂರ್ವಕ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಅವರ ಮಾತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತಿಳಿಯಿತು, ಆ ಪದ್ಯಗಳ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಾಸುಕಿಯವರದ್ದು ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕೈವಾಡ ಇದೆ ಎನ್ನುವುದಾಗಿ ತಿಳಿದಿದೆ. ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಆಷಾಢಸ್ಯ ಪ್ರಥಮ ದಿವಸೆ ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲೇ ವಯಂ ಅಧುನಾ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ವಯಂ ಸುಸಂಪನ್ನ ಇತಿ ವಿಶ್ವಸಿಮಿ. ಒಂದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ, ಅದು ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮದು ಹೊಸ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ನಮ್ಮದು. ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜಿಸುವುದು ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ತೊಡಕಿನ ವಿಷಯವೇ. ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜನೆ ಮಾಡುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ನಮಗೆ ಸಹಾಯವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳು, ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರು, ವೈಸ್ ಚಾನ್ಸಲರ್, ರಿಜಿಸ್ಟ್ರಾರ್, ಇಬ್ಬರು ರಿಜಿಸ್ಟ್ರಾರ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಸುಶಾಂತ್ ಜೋಶಿ ಹಾಗೆ ಸಂದೀಪ್ ನಾಯರ್, ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕೂಡ ಎಸ್. ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಮಗೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದರು ಎಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಮಗೆ ಅವಕಾಶ, ನಮಗೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜನೆ ಮಾಡುವುದಕ್ಕಿರ್ಬೋದು ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಸೌಕರ್ಯಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಒದಗಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಾಗರಾಜ್ ರೆಡ್ಡಿಯವರು ಕೂಡ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜನೆ ಮಾಡುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬ ಅವರು ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೀಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡೋಣ, ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಖುದ್ದಾಗಿ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ನಡೆಸಿಕೊಡುವಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಸಹಾಯವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ವೇದಿಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತಾದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿಯ ನಿರ್ವಾಹಕರು, ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ವಿಭಾಗ, ಇವರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ತುಂಬ ಸಹಕಾರವನ್ನಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಶಾಲೆಯ ಪ್ರತಿನಿಧಿಯಾಗಿ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಮತ್ತು ಲೈವ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮಿಂಗ್ ಕೂಡ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಆಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಸಭೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ಭಾ ಅಂದರೆ ಕಾಂತಿ ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ. ಅದು ಸಹಿತವಾದದ್ದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಸಹೃದಯರು ಮತ್ತು ಅಭಿಜ್ಞರು ಸೇರಿ ಬಂದದ್ರಿಂದಾಗಿ. ಆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತರಿದ್ದಂತಹ ಹಿರಿಯರಾದ ಶತವಾಧಾನಿ ಆರ್ ಗಣೇಶ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ, ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಮತ್ತು ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಹರಿ ರವಿಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆಥರ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ, ಹಾಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಹಲವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಡೀನ್, ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಡೀನ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಎಚ್.ಎಸ್. ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತರಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳು. ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಉಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಉಲ್ಲೇಖ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದದ್ದು ನಮ್ಮ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ನಾಲೆಜ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ನ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿನಯ್ ಚಂದ್ರ ಅವರು. ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಸ್ಕೇಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ, ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ತಲೆಬಿಸಿಗಳು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಹೀಗೆ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಅಂಶದಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ನಮಗೆ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಫುಲ್ ಫ್ಲೆಜ್ಡ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಮಾಡುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರ ಸಹಕಾರ ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು, ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಉತ್ತೇಜನ ಸಹಕಾರ ಎರಡೂ ಕೂಡ. ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದರು, ಆದರೆ ಹೆಸರಿಲ್ಲದೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದವರು ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿನಾಯಕ ರಜತ್ ಭಟ್ ಹಾಗೂ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವೆಂಕಟರಾಘವನ್ ಅವರು. ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಹೇಳಿರುವ, ಹೇಳದೇ ಇರುವ, ಉಲ್ಲಿಖಿತ, ಅನುಲ್ಲಿಖಿತ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಂತರ್ಜಾಲ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮದ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಸ್ವಾದಿಸಿದ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ಸಹೃದಯರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಅನಂತ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳು. ಏತಾವತ ಸರ್ವಂ ಸುಸಂಪನ್ನಂ ಇತಿ ವಿಶ್ವಸಿಮಿ, ತಥಾಪಿ ಇದಮಸ್ತು. ಪ್ರವರ್ತತಾಂ ಪ್ರಕೃತಿ ಹಿತಾಯ ಪಾರ್ಥಿವಃ ಸರಸ್ವತೀ ಶ್ರುತಿ ಮಹತೀ ಮಹೀಯತಾಂ ಮಮಾಪಿ ಚಕ್ಷಪಯತು ನೀಲಲೋಹಿತಃ ಪುನರ್ಭವಂ ಪರಿಗತ ಶಕ್ತಿರಾತ್ಮಭೂಃ. ಶ್ರೀಕೃಷ್ಣಾರ್ಪಣಮಸ್ತು.
Hello. Please join us for tea and biscuits outside the hall. Please join us for tea and snacks outside the hall.